This video contains strong adult language, may not be suitable for children or sensitive people. Boom boom.
The Cleveland Browns. First up is the Cleveland Browns in the 2020 wildcard game on the opening freaking play. After 20 frustrated years post re-expansion, the Browns haven't had many iconic moments to celebrate. Oh, but not the opening play of the 2020 wildcard game between them and the Steelers, as Captain Fatfuck fumbled the snap and Carl Joseph walked into the end zone for an easy 6. The Browns would cruise to their first ever playoff win since the re-expansion, then go right back to sucking. Cleveland Browns. Wait a minute. Did you guys go 0-16 that one year and have a parade and then dub your own stadium the Factory of Sadness?
You are a factory of sadness!
I bet getting reminded that the Haslams own your team is about as funny as all the Deshaun Cosby names I've come up with.
We definitely fucked up getting Deshaun Watson. We didn't really care if he was getting his dinger tugged on as long as he could play football.
Which I'm gonna give to you right now. Deshanny Masterson, Groper Cleveland, Desharvie Watstein, Deshaun Snyder, Justin Tugger's mentor. Hey, that's less nicknames than the QB jersey I keep seeing. Can I get a drum roll for all these? Jim Brown and Otto Graham, Huntington Bank Stadium. These were not easy to find in Google Earth, but eventually I located them just outside the stadium. On one side, you have Otto Graham looking menacing, like legit would not be surprised if lasers were installed in his eyes, though the real Otto was pretty scary looking in and of himself. Speaking of scary, we also have Jim Brown done kind of the same style, but with a slightly more square base. Both great subjects. Hopefully, one day the QB jersey is immortalized outside of Huntington Bank Stadium too.
Cleveland. After 30 years of suckitude, the Browns finally seem to be on the upswing, but I'm not buying it. You will never prosper again. Art Modell cucked your team so hard, and in the process of doing so, fired the best head coach in NFL history right as he was turning your team around. Odell Beckham Jr. hasn't been good since his boat trip in 2016. Myles Garrett could have killed a guy with his helmet on the field on national television, and now he's up for the Walter Payton Man of the Year. Nice PR spin, losers. The best player in team history is Jim Brown, who is an absolute piece of shit domestic abuser and also overrated since he played against off-duty firefighters, and his replacement, Leroy Kelly, stepped in and immediately made 3 All-Pro team. Chomps, Browns. This guy would have a 10 out of 10 rating if they had just toned down the aggressiveness in his face a little bit. I love the name and his general look, but the angry look slash smile makes him look like he has bad intentions. I like the look more when he has his teeth, because without them he kinda looks like an angry old man missing his dentures. Overall though, great job Cleveland. Rating 9 out of 10. Cleveland Browns, Otto Graham. Pretty clear choice here. Graham was basically the Tom Brady of his era in terms of winning championships. He made 5 Pro Bowls, 7 All-Pro teams, won 3 MVPs, and 7 rings. 4 of those rings were in the AAFC, but he then won 3 more rings in the NFL. He was a professional starter for 10 seasons and made the title game all 10 years. Individually, he led the league in yards 5 times, touchdown passes 3 times, and passer rating 5 times. Even if you think he was a product of great teams and coaching, he still got the job done. Remind you of anybody else? I think Cleveland fans today would take Graham's win-loss percentage from their current quarterback any day. Cleveland Browns, Mike Phipps. You might be shocked to not see Tim Couch, Brady Quinn, Johnny Manziel, or Brandon Weeden here, but none of them were as bad as this guy was for as long. Phipps was an objectively terrible quarterback by every measure, yet thanks to his draft status, 3rd overall pick, he lasted 7 seasons in Cleveland, starting in 4 of them, in which he combined to throw 35 touchdowns, 72 interceptions, and a 51.3 passer rating. Overall, he lasted 12 years in the NFL and finished with 55 touchdowns and 108 interceptions. Yeah, gross, I know. Cleveland Browns, 1986 AFC Championship game. Cleveland is known for its long list of heartbreaking playoff defeats, but to me, nothing tops losing the 86 AFC Championship game at home, in large part thanks to the drive. You know the story by now. Cleveland had a 20-13 lead with 5 minutes left before John Elway drove Denver 98 yards to tie and send the game into overtime. Cleveland got the ball but did nothing with it before Elway once again drove Denver into field goal range, where they made the game-winning kick to win 23-20, one defensive stop away from the Super Bowl. Cleveland Browns, Bernie Kosar. Kosar is a literal folk superhero in Cleveland. And considering all the quarterbacks the Browns have had since him, it's understandable why they'd feel this way. He was a good quarterback for a few years in the late 80s and came excruciatingly close to making the Super Bowl several times, but ran into John Elway each time. So he wasn't bad. The Cleveland fans tend to act like he was a Hall of Fame quarterback when he wasn't. Cleveland Browns. This team gave a sexual predator the most guaranteed money in NFL history this offseason. As if that's not bad enough, when he comes back from his laughably short 11-game suspension, some of you Browns fans will forgive him while creaming your pants the first time he throws for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. You assholes. You absolute fucking dipshits. I hope you continue to eat shit like you have every year since Ronald Reagan was in the Oval Office battling Alzheimer's. Cleveland Browns, 1947 Otto Graham. This one does kind of come with a bit of an asterisk because Graham was essentially playing against plumbers. And I'm not just saying that because it took place in 1947, I'm saying it because the Browns at this point in time were playing in the AAFC, the All-American Football Conference, not the NFL. However, the NFL later decided to accept the AAFC stats and incorporate them into a player's career NFL stats, which is what they did with Graham, but I digress. Graham's numbers were excellent, a 109.2 passer rating, 25 touchdown passes, another touchdown run, and he also led them to a championship. Even though his final numbers were mediocre in the game, he did run for a score. Can you believe that, though? The Cleveland Browns at one point were winning championships consistently. God, thank God it's not the 1940s anymore. Cleveland Browns. A sexual predator is your starting quarterback, and your fan base roots for him to win. That's it. Spare me the, I hate that we signed Watson, but I hope we still win routine. Hey, dipshits, you won't win unless Watson plays well. Just admit that you care more about winning football games than women being assaulted. We all know it's true. Just say it. Cleveland Browns. This one's pretty self-explanatory. The name Browns is extremely offensive. People of brown skin color. There's no place for this in today's society. Racism is a disease. You should not judge somebody based on the color of their skin, but by their character. I really thought racism was going to end forever when the Redskins changed their name and when the Indians changed their name, but unfortunately, it's somehow still alive. The Browns need to change their name immediately. I'm going to write a very, very impassioned letter to Jimmy Haslam. Cleveland Browns, Corey Coleman. I had to think about this one, but in the end, I went with Corey Coleman. In 2 seasons with Cleveland, after being picked 15th overall in 2016, he caught just 58 passes, 718 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He appeared in just 19 games, and that was it. He's probably most famous for dropping what would have been a first down pass in the final game of the Browns' infamous winless 2017 season that might have given them a chance to win versus the Steelers, but he couldn't hang on, and his NFL career overall ended shortly thereafter. It's hard to get more of a miss than this. Cleveland Browns, Mike Phipps, 1975. If you look at Mike Phipps' career, it's honest to God amazing this guy lasted as long as he did as a starting quarterback in the NFL. A lot of it had to do with his high draft selection, so again, teams thought, oh, we can maybe get the most out of him. Well, that was not the case in 1975, as Mr. Phipps completed just over 51% of his passes. He averaged 5.6 yards per attempt, but the big bugaboo here for him is that he threw 4 touchdown passes to 19 interceptions for a dreadful 47.1 rating, and the team went 3-8 in his 11 starts. I don't know how an NFL team can purposely trot out somebody as terrible as this over the course of several years, unless they're tanking. Cleveland Browns. I honestly don't even know what to say about the Cleveland Browns, because every person, like not every person, but pretty much every single person listening to this has zero recollection of the last time the Browns were consistently good. Every single person listening to this probably only knows the Browns from the Deshaun Watson trade, which everybody already knows stinks. And there's so much revisionist history about Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, first overall pick, had some good years, but he was a disappointment in Cleveland. And then we all know about the struggles they had for so many years with so many different quarterbacks. So a lot of the Cleveland Brown fans that are listening to this have only known that the Cleveland Browns suck. So what do I even say about that to you guys? And that in and of itself, I used to say this about Houston, but at least Houston, like the Houston Texans, at least Houston has the excuse of, well, we were an expansion team. And you'll say, but Barry, the Browns were an expansion team in 99 too. No, the Browns had tons of history before that. The Browns had all the Jim Brown years, and you had the Bernie Kosar years in the late 80s, and then you guys got cucked by John Elway 3 times in the late 80s with a chance to go to the Super Bowl. But that's already been overplayed. So I admit, I honestly have no idea what to say to trigger Browns, other than Deshaun Watson might be back next year. I mean, I don't really know. I don't know what to say. And in a way, that in and of itself should trigger you, because you're fucking irrelevant. You don't mean anything. Most Brown fans have never even felt what it's like to be in the middle of a heated competition in the postseason. Okay, you guys made the divisional round a couple years ago versus the Chiefs. That's the closest you guys came to actually actually, being relevant in the postseason. And then you guys missed the playoffs the next year. And then you missed the playoffs the year after that. And then you made it last year with Joe Flacco. And then you guys got blown out. So a lot of you Browns fans listening to this have no idea what success feels like. You have no idea what success feels like. And you know it, but that still sucks. That's still an embarrassment. You should be embarrassed. You really should be fucking embarrassed with yourselves that you're a Browns fan. That you pay money to that franchise, you should be embarrassed with yourself. The fact that you still root for them. That to me, that's the best I can come up with. The fact that I can't even come up with anything to trigger you because your team is so shit is triggering enough. Cleveland Browns quarterback. Now the Browns need a shitload of things, but it all really doesn't matter unless they get a quarterback. Now we all know about Deshaun Watson and what he's done and the fact that he's probably done in the NFL now after another Achilles tear. But the other quarterbacks that the Browns trotted out in his place last year were also very, very stinky. So if you don't have a quarterback, it doesn't matter what else the Browns, how strong they are at other positions. The quarterback is the foundation. It's the biggest building piece. And so they really need to go for a quarterback. And especially now, if they're going to lose Myles Garrett, because Myles Garrett wants out, maybe getting a quarterback, maybe it'll convince him to change his mind. I don't know. But they need something at the most important position if they want to be relevant or if they want to have a chance at winning games in the near future. Cleveland Browns, 1957. Yes, there was once a time where the Browns were the most feared franchise in the NFL, and their draft in 1957 was a big reason for that. Their first pick was Jim Brown, who is arguably the best football player of all time, even though he might have played against plumbers. He made 9 Pro Bowls in 9 years and was an 8-time first-team All-Pro. Their next pick was a quarterback. Milt Plum was a multiple-time Pro Bowler and a respectable player. Henry Jordan, their third pick, was a defensive tackle. He's another Hall of Famer. He made 4 Pro Bowls and 5 first-team All-Pros. And then a little while later, down the draft, they drafted another Hall of Fame offensive lineman in Gene Hickerson, who made 6 Pro Bowls and 3 first-team All-Pros. But they weren't done yet. They drafted Laverne Torkson in the 18th round, and he ended up becoming a Pro Bowl and All-Pro in his own right, in addition to drafting decent starters like Don Gillis and Gene Cockrell. This was the motherlode for the Cleveland Browns in 1957. And looking back at it now, I'm surprised they didn't win more championships after this. They did win it all in 1964, and then after 1965, Jim Brown retired. But still, this was a hell of a class, even if a lot of people nowadays might not remember anybody besides Jim Brown. Cleveland Browns, Andre Rison, 1995. Heading into 95, Andre Rison was having one of the best young careers of any receiver ever. His best years came with the Atlanta Falcons, famously, and also his girlfriend, Lisa Left Eye Lopez, burned his house down. But that's not really relevant here. Although maybe in a way it is, because this signing was the equivalent of burning your entire franchise down, literally. Heading into 95, the Browns were fresh off of a playoff appearance and the number 1 defense, and they felt that maybe one more weapon, like Andre Rison, was going to be the difference between them having another divisional round exit and winning the Super Bowl. And it made sense. That's why they doled out a 5-year, $17 million contract with $5 million guaranteed. Again, for 1995, this was record-setting. Not only would Andre Rison's production in his 1 year with Cleveland be terrible, it was also a big reason why the Browns literally moved away from Cleveland, or at least that's what Art Modell says, because his spending spree, according to Modell, and now I know he's full of shit, but still, he said that paying Rison so much money was a big reason why he couldn't afford to keep the lease and keep the Browns in Cleveland, blah, blah, blah. So not only was Rison a terrible player, but his signing ended up partially being responsible for the Browns literally going extinct, at least for 4 years. Cleveland Browns, Kevin Stefanski. More like Kevin's the daddy. Get it? Because what a silver fox he is. Anyway, Stefanski, his entire tenure with the Browns has been extremely up and down. It seems like maybe he's on the verge of becoming a good coach or considered one of the elite coaches. He has a season like last year where the Browns go 3-14. Although, again, how much of that is because of him, I don't know. It seems like every single quarterback he's had besides Deshaun Watson, ironically enough, has done pretty well under him. But at a certain point, I do believe the Browns might get tired of the inconsistency, which is ironically due because of their terrible decisions in the front office. So I think Stefanski is a good coach. I think he's been able to get a lot out of little on the offensive side of the ball. But at the end of the day, this is a performance business, and the Browns are a terribly run organization. So I think if he has another bad season, he'll be out of there. I have his hot seat ranking at a 3.5 out of 5. Cleveland Browns, Jerome Ford. Ford is entering his 4th season in the NFL, all with Cleveland. And for most of his first 3 seasons, he was second fiddle behind Nick Chubb, and he filled in whenever Chubb got hurt. But now that Chubb is gone, Ford is taking over the top spot. And last season, he averaged 5.4 yards per carry, but he averaged just 7 attempts per game. I believe that the Browns will look to run the ball more more to help take pressure off of whoever their quarterback is, and I believe Ford will break the 1,000-yard barrier. He's also shown to be a capable receiver as well, so I think this is a very good player who is finally going to get a very good opportunity to showcase his skill. Cleveland Browns, Jerry Jeudy. I would love to say Deshaun Watson for this, but I think at this point everybody knows that he sucks and he's washed up and has the worst contract possibly in sports history, so he's not really overrated anymore. And honestly, looking at Cleveland's roster, it's not like a lot of players besides Myles Garrett really get a lot of pub. That's why I went with Jerry Jeudy, who had a breakout season in 2024 and a Pro Bowl season in his first year with Cleveland. But again, I'm wanting to see if he can keep it up instead of having it just be a flash in the pan. Jeudy has always been highly thought of by teams, considering he was a 15th overall pick back in 2020, and Denver gave him every opportunity in 4 years to become that #1 receiving option, and he never broke out. Once again, he's here not because he's bad, but because I want to see if he is more than just a one-year wonder. Cleveland Browns, Joe Flacco for now. Here's the deal. I think everybody, well, I say this, the last time Joe Flacco was with the Browns late in the 2023 season, he kind of had this miraculous little 3 or 4 game stretch there at the end of the season where he was like one of the best quarterbacks in the league out of nowhere. And where have we seen that before with Flacco, where he has these random 3 or 4 game spurts where he just plays out of his mind, similar to 2012, right? But yeah, this is a guy who, him and Rodgers are the fucking elder statesmen. Him, Rodgers, and Stafford are the elder statesmen at the quarterback position in this league. But I mean, let's just be real here. The Browns, they might carry 4 quarterbacks, and the quarterback who's getting the most attention for the Browns is Shedeur Sanders, right? I really don't think there's any doubt that at a certain point this season, that if not Sanders, somebody else is going to be, whether it's Dylan Gabriel or Kenny Pickett or whatever. Flacco's not going to last the whole year. He hasn't started double-digit games since 2017. Okay, so he's not going to be the full-time starter this year. He is the greatest mediocre quarterback ever, right? He lucked into a Super Bowl ring and Super Bowl MVP, but he's never had the expectations of a great quarterback because he's never been a great quarterback, and that certainly hasn't changed now that he's 40 years old, right? So his prove it rating is a 0 out of 10, not because he's a legendary player, but because really, who gives a shit? He doesn't have anything left to prove because he's not good enough to really have anything historically left to prove. His legacy has already been set.
When I say this name, there will be a mix of emotions. Baker Mayfield. He's a lightning rod. You either love his toughness, tenacity, and swagger, or hate the colossal chip on his shoulder and questionable decision-making in the pocket. He's been in the news a lot as of late, hasn't he? Betrayed by the Browns for $235 million guaranteed, many pondered about his future. He's been in football limbo. A starting quarterback who was in danger of not having a starting job heading into the upcoming season. For now, he's at least free from the factory of renewed sadness. Baker's been traded to hopefully greener pastures. So how did we end up getting here? This time last season, it would have been inconceivable to see Mayfield on a different franchise, let alone question his long-term future as a starter in the NFL. Nowadays, though, he has more than a few doubters about his ability. I'll admit when Baker was drafted into the NFL, I didn't like him. It wasn't what he did on the field, but his actions off of it. He gave me Ryan Leaf vibes. Now, you can say that I was over-exaggerating his arrest intentions with the press, but people had concerns about his size and how his game would translate at the next level. In a way, Cleveland was the best and the worst place he could have gone. As the #1 pick, it was the chance to validate his ambitions and to revive a shithole franchise from the brink of hell itself. On the other hand, he was also going to the walking punchline of the league. Remember where the Browns were back then? 0-16. The quarterback jersey. Perpetual ineptitude. Ruining Deshaun Kaiser by rushing him into a starting role. Hugh Jackson as head coach. Remember when the Browns had hope in 2018? When Baker came in cold for an injured Tyrod Taylor? How he slung the ball to help them come back and beat the Jets? For their first win since 2016? Yeah, it was the Jets, but still. When he would go on to set the rookie record for touchdown passes thrown? It was a perfect match. Both team and player had massive chips on their shoulder and desired to be something far more than they were. Mayfield was hailed as the future of Cleveland. It was premature as hell, but who do you consider the best quarterback of the Browns before then? Kelly Holcomb? 1 year of Derek Anderson? It's slim pickings. There were great expectations for Baker in 2019, but a few things undid them. First, himself. He got cocky and complacent. Everyone realized Mayfield only had one move. Roll to the right. Roll to the fucking right over and over and over again. He didn't try to adapt until it was too late. And And that would also be because of the human thumb Cleveland trotted out as a coach. Freddie Kitchens never led a team before. He called plays for one half of a season, and the Browns arrogantly thought he would be fine managing all of the egos in a locker room. He failed miserably. Would you trust a man who called a fucking draw play on a 4th and 9? Even Ask Madden wouldn't tell you to do that. To be honest, Baker needed that year. It forced him to realize that he couldn't do it his way. He had to adapt. And he did just that to rebound to form in 2020. Kept the interceptions down. He was a driver of offense. His QBR was top 10 in the NFL. Baker helped to lead the Browns to the playoffs for only the second time since their return to Cleveland. He even did something thought impossible years ago. Helped them aid in Pittsburgh becoming a meme. True, it said a hell of a lot more about Pittsburgh than Cleveland, but Baker did what he had to do. Unfortunately, Cleveland would be wanting more. Against Kansas City, the Browns had opportunities to overcome the might of Arrowhead. Their defense was lights out. Patrick Mahomes got taken out due to injury. They were a touchdown away from leading and a shot at greatness itself, but Baker couldn't elevate his play. He got outdueled by Chad Henne. It was still an outstanding season, but the grumbling and doubters started to pour in from the outside. Baker is a starting caliber QB, but he isn't going to take you to the promised land single-handedly. He's a folk hero, but not one that wins you a ring without help around him. And in the modern NFL, that's not good enough. Cleveland still loved him, though. And that's all that mattered. Until 2021. First came a grudge match against Kansas City, where Baker still couldn't elevate himself and forced passes to the very end. But where it really hurts? In Week 2 against Houston.
And on the interception, the return is coming back. I think it's Justin Reed. Baker Mayfield tries to make the tackle, and Mayfield takes the worst of it.
This moment ended Baker Mayfield's time with the Browns. Injuries tend to cause change, but it wasn't for the reason you'd suspect. First, consider the ailment he had. A torn labrum in his non-throwing shoulder. One that wasn't only a near-complete tear, but it was re-aggravated a month later against Arizona. You don't have to be a quarterback guru to know that the non-throwing shoulder and arm have a huge role in passing mechanics. It helps to stabilize your throw, allows you to get more hip rotation, and helps with pass accuracy. What I'm trying to say is that Baker should have never tried to play with it. Playing with an awkward sling completely fucked up his passing mechanics. He had to relearn them on the fly. His shoulder had to stay locked so the injury wouldn't worsen. There's gutsiness and then there's sheer idiocy. By toughing it out through that shoulder tear, Baker cost himself millions of dollars. He was awful because of it. The altered mechanics and decreased throw power had forced him to make even worse decisions with the ball. He was being baited into easy interceptions by defenses. Baker turned into a colossal liability simply because of his toughness and desire to win. His own confidence was his undoing. Playing against Pittsburgh, he was cooked. He could do nothing. Once the Browns were eliminated from the playoffs, he finally got shoulder surgery, but it was too little too late. What this shows me is the utter incompetence of the Browns organization. Yes, Baker Mayfield was stubborn and felt like he could play through his debilitating injury. There was no way it should have been allowed to happen. The Browns, Stefanski, Haslam, anyone should have told Baker to put his or their egos aside and heal up. He should have been on IR the moment we realized he couldn't throw properly. They probably injected him with enough Toradol to be considered a drug mule on most Sundays. Cleveland allowed him to be a detriment on the field all season and suddenly got shocked when he couldn't fucking throw properly. We can't go anywhere with Baker, they cry, even though he was just one of the many problems in the organization in 2021. Was he at fault for the team defense being injured to shit? Was he at fault for the massive COVID outbreak before the Raiders game? The offensive inconsistency you can point at him, but everything else would have been a challenge even if Baker was healthy. I firmly believe that if Mayfield never played with that injury, he would still be the starting QB for the Browns. That dude was a living legend in that city until then. That shoulder tear and the awful film he showed forced Cleveland to make a deal with the devil himself. More than likely with a few happy endings involved. The beloved Deshaun Watson was acquired fresh off a litany of lawsuits and a year away from football for a king's ransom of picks and immediately given $235 million guaranteed. No shit, Baker's pissed. If you put your body on the line and the team you did it for immediately spits in your face, you'd be the same. Once that move happened, Mayfield was never playing for Cleveland again. The fans would hate it, Baker would be sullen, and it would just be awkward as hell. At the end of the day, the Browns had absolutely no leverage in the trade. Everyone knew they were trying to get rid of Baker. Baker wanted nothing to do with the Browns. His contract was gigantic for teams trying to juggle the salary cap, and next to nobody wanted anything to do with him. Things got so dire there were rumors of him being cut. The Panthers nearly traded for him at the NFL draft, but it fell through in the end due to issues with salary retention. There were a few murmurs of Seattle wanting him, but those were proven to be untrue in the end. Cleveland would face further embarrassment if Baker was going to sit out and be paid not to play in 2022. So they traded him for some tokens in Madden Ultimate Team. He's now a Carolina Panther, as expected for a while, for a conditional 2024 fifth-round pick. Traded for literally pennies on the dollar. Cleveland even had to eat a chunk of his contract in order for it to go through. An era once thought to be as glorious as the return of football burned like the Cuyahoga. Good news, Browns fans, you now have to go through what the Steelers did with Big Ben. The Panthers are saying there will be a quarterback competition, but Baker's easily the best one on their roster. Look at the shit they were chucking out there last year. Sam Darnold had about 3 decent games before falling off the map. That injury he got in the middle of the season was a mercy kill. After that, they threw a wrecked Cam Newton out there for nostalgia and putting asses in seats. Because it certainly wasn't for his quarterbacking in the year 2021, that's for sure. PJ Walker wishes he were still on the Houston Roughnecks in the XFL. He struggled that much. The Panthers were near dead last in terms of passing yards, completed air yards per throw, bat throw percentage, and QBR. The offensive line in front of them? All I have to say is that their blindside tackle was Cam Irving, a guard converted from center. Matt Rule was so disheveled and panicked that he fired his offensive coordinator for not running the ball enough. When Christian McCaffrey was injured, under his skilled leadership, they would try things like rotating quarterbacks. And rotating quarterbacks in the middle of a fucking game. The new offensive coordinator in Carolina is Ben McAdoo, who knows a thing or two about throwing QBs under the bus. Ben had Baker as the 6th best QB in the 2018 draft, behind Mason Rudolph. Once again, goes to show you the love-hate relationship with Baker. Don't confuse me with being a fan of Baker Mayfield. His personality rubs me the wrong way, and he has severe limitations at quarterback at this level. However, even I can see that Mayfield's been completely fucked over. Dude went from the future of the Browns franchise to exile from Berea in about 6 months. Everyone thinks he's a bum because he played through a severe injury limiting his ability. He was traded for slightly more than what Case Keenum fetched. He got a 7th. Baker got a conditional 5th after salary retention. It's either going to be Baker having a colossal chip on his shoulder or a self-destruction not seen in years. It'll be fascinating to watch either way. You want to know the best part of all this? Guess who Carolina ends up playing in Week 1? The Cleveland Browns. The only way this would be even juicier is if they were playing at the Dog Pound. I honestly hope Carolina wins and Baker throws for over 300 yards and 3 TDs. I don't care if he sucks the rest of the year, the meme world needs Mayfield to take the biggest shit all over the Browns. It's honestly deserved for how they raw dogged him.